You're watching a movie, an explosion goes off, a car chase tears through the screen, and then two characters lean in and start talking. Suddenly, you have no idea what they're saying. You rewind. You still can't hear it. You turn the volume up so high the next action scene nearly blows your speakers out. Eventually, you just turn on subtitles and accept that this is how watching movies works now. You are not alone. A 2025 NPR survey found that more than half of Americans regularly use subtitles because movie audio is simply too muddled to follow. And a separate study found that 70% of viewers say they can't hear what actors are saying without them. This isn't a you problem. It isn't your TV, your hearing, or your sound system. The problem is being built directly into the movies themselves. And today, we're going to break down exactly why it's happening and who's responsible. If you've ever felt this frustration, subscribe and hit the like button so more people can find this video. And drop a comment telling me which movie or show made you reach for the subtitles recently. I want to know how widespread this actually is. The dialogue problem is real and it's getting worse. Let's establish something important right at the start. This isn't nostalgia. People aren't just imagining that old movies were easier to understand. The problem of unclear dialogue is a real, documented, industry-wide issue that sound designers, directors, and even fellow filmmakers are openly talking about. The numbers back it up. 70% of viewers using subtitles by default is an extraordinary figure. That's not a small group of people with hearing difficulties. That's the majority of the viewing public opting out of the core audio experience of a film because the dialogue track has become unreliable. Something has fundamentally changed in how movies are mixed, and it's worth understanding every layer of why. Reason 1, action has gotten louder and dialogue paid the price. The first and most straightforward reason is the sheer volume of modern action sound design. Over the past 2 decades, blockbuster films have leaned harder and harder into spectacle. Explosions are bigger, chase scenes are longer, battles are more intense, and all of that translates directly into louder, more aggressive sound effects filling the audio mix. The problem is that an audio mix has limits. You can't make everything loud at the same time, because then nothing feels loud. Sound designers talk about dynamic range, which is the difference between the quietest and loudest moments in a film. That contrast is what makes an explosion feel shocking and what makes a quiet conversation feel intimate. But when the entire film is essentially one long action sequence, the dynamic range collapses. Dialogue, which needs to sit in a specific frequency range between the music and the effects, gets squeezed. Sound engineers describe it as trying to fit a conversation into a room where everyone is already shouting. You can raise the dialogue level, but if you raise it high enough to compete with a grenade explosion, then the grenade sounds like a small pop rather than a weapon. The only solution is to keep dialogue at a moderate level and accept that during intense scenes, it will feel relatively quiet. In a well-designed film with natural pacing, this works fine. In a film that is wall-to-wall action from the opening frame, dialogue loses every time. Reason 2. Movies are mixed for theaters, not your living room. Here's a technical reality that most viewers never think about, but that explains a huge portion of the problem. When a major film is mixed for release, the sound team is working in a professional dubbing stage designed to replicate the acoustic conditions of a commercial cinema. They're calibrating their work to what's called the X curve, an industry standard equalization curve for cinema playback that rolls off high frequencies above 2 kHz at roughly 3 decibels per octave. The system is optimized for a large room with a specific speaker configuration, specific wall materials, and a specific distance between the audience and the screen. Your living room is none of those things. Most people are watching on flat-screen TVs with speakers built into the edges of the panel, pointing sideways or downward rather than at the viewer. Older televisions had large front-facing speakers because the cathode ray tube design gave them physical space for proper drivers. Modern ultra-thin TVs have tiny speakers tucked wherever they fit, and they often fire in the wrong direction entirely. When a mix that was calibrated for a cinema system with thousands of watts of speaker power and acoustic treatment plays through a flat TV speaker, the result is muddy and compressed. The dialogue frequencies that were carefully balanced for a cinema environment don't translate cleanly to a living room speaker, and the result is exactly the muffled, hard-to-follow quality that's pushing millions of people towards subtitles. Reason 3. Actors are mumbling more than ever. This one is going to be slightly uncomfortable to say, but it's real and it's a significant factor. Modern acting has shifted dramatically toward naturalism and authenticity, which in many ways is a positive development. Performances are more nuanced, more emotionally complex, and more believable than they were in earlier eras. But there's a side effect that directly impacts dialogue clarity, and it comes down to microphone technology and the acting habits it enables. In the early decades of filmmaking, capturing usable audio was genuinely difficult. A single large boom microphone had to be positioned just above the actors, barely out of frame, and every word had to be captured cleanly in that single take, because the editing and post-production tools to fix it later simply didn't exist. Actors had to project. They had to enunciate. They had to make sure every syllable was clear enough to record properly. Think of theater performance, where actors must reach the back row of a large auditorium without a microphone. That level of vocal precision was essentially the standard for early film performance as well. Today, actors are surrounded by microphones. There are boom mics above, tiny wireless body mics hidden in clothing, and sophisticated post-production tools that can clean, restore, and manipulate dialogue in ways that were impossible 20 years ago. This gives actors the freedom to perform with incredible subtlety. A character can whisper, mumble, trail off mid-sentence, or deliver lines with almost no vocal energy because the technology will capture it and the editing suite can polish it afterward. The authenticity this produces is genuinely valuable for dramatic performance, but the unintended consequence is that audiences can no longer hear what the characters are saying. The line between naturalistic nuance and simply inaudible delivery has gotten very thin, and many actors and directors are crossing it regularly without realizing the impact on the viewing experience. The Christopher Nolan problem no conversation about modern dialogue clarity would be complete without addressing the most famous example of this issue, Christopher Nolan. Nolan is one of the most respected and commercially successful directors working today, and his films are also, by almost universal agreement, some of the most difficult to understand orally. In Tenet, a film that is already conceptually challenging due to its time and version premise, the dialogue is so often buried under the score and effects that what should be a mind-bending experience becomes a genuine headache. In Oppenheimer, a dialogue-driven historical drama with a $200 million budget, critical scenes involving conversation are overwhelmed by the sound mix to the point where key lines are simply lost. The Dark Knight Rises introduced audiences to Tom Hardy's Bane, whose mask-muffled delivery became more of a running joke than a menacing character trait. What makes the Nolan situation particularly revealing is that it's not accidental, and it's not just audience perception. In interviews and in his own book, Nolan has acknowledged receiving a significant number of complaints from fellow filmmakers, not critics, not audiences, but other professional directors, telling him that his dialogue is inaudible. He is aware of the problem and has largely chosen to continue anyway, which tells you something important about the attitude at the top of the industry. Part of what drives this choice is that Nolan does not use ADAR, which stands for Additional Dialogue Recording, a standard practice where actors re-record dialogue in a studio after filming to ensure clean, clear audio. Virtually every other major film and television production uses ADAR extensively. Nolan refuses it in pursuit of authentic, on-location audio, which is admirable as an artistic commitment but has real consequences for intelligibility. He also frequently shoots with IMAX cameras, which are mechanically quite loud and create additional challenges for capturing clean dialogue on set. Streaming compression and the quality gap, another layer of this problem, lies in how films are delivered to audiences. When you watch a movie on a streaming service, the audio you're hearing is not the same audio that was in the original theatrical mix or even on the Blu-ray disc. Streaming audio is compressed to keep file sizes manageable and to keep the audio and video synchronized during transmission. A Blu-ray disc can carry a full-fidelity audio track at 48 kHz and 24-bit master audio quality. A streaming version of the same film will be a compressed approximation of that track. What's worse is that different streaming platforms have different standards for audio quality, and many of them are not particularly high. Netflix has invested significantly in audio specifications and quality control, implementing dialogue normalization standards that help maintain consistent levels. Other platforms like Tubi and some of Amazon's content don't apply the same level of quality control. And the result is audio that was already somewhat compromised by the theatrical mix process being further degraded by compression and inconsistent delivery standards. By the time it comes out of your TV speaker, the dialogue you're struggling to hear has been through multiple stages of compromise before it ever reached your ears. The faster editing problem? There's one more factor that doesn't get enough attention, which is the pace of modern editing and what it does to your brain's ability to process sound. The average shot length in films has dropped dramatically over the decades. In classical Hollywood filmmaking, scenes would often hold on a single shot for 10, 15, even 20 seconds or more, giving your eyes and ears time to settle into the scene and absorb what was being said. Today, fast-cut editing with shot lengths of 1 to 3 seconds is common even in dialogue scenes. Skyfall, to pick one well-known example, featured an action sequence with an average shot length of about 1.5 seconds. When images change that rapidly, your brain is working hard to process the visual information. And that cognitive load competes with your ability to clearly process and retain audio. Moving from a loud action shot to a quiet dialogue shot in less than 2 seconds doesn't give your ears or your brain time to adjust. The contrast is jarring, and the dialogue in that quiet shot gets lost in the mental transition. This is a genuine perceptual problem that no amount of speaker quality can fully compensate for, because it's happening in your brain before you've had time to consciously register what was said. What you can actually do about it? There are practical steps that can help if you're dealing with this problem at home. The most impactful change is investing in a dedicated center channel speaker or a quality soundbar with a well-tuned center channel, because the center speaker is responsible for almost all dialogue in a home theater mix. A TV's built-in speakers are simply not designed to reproduce dialogue with clarity, but a proper center channel speaker aimed directly at the listening position makes an immediate and significant difference. In your receiver or soundbar settings, you can also manually increase the center channel level by a few decibels, which brings voices forward without affecting the rest of the mix. Turning off dynamic range compression or night mode ensures you're hearing the full dynamic range of the mix rather than a flattened version. If you're in a movie theater and the dialogue is genuinely painful to follow, soft earplugs can actually help by reducing overall volume to a comfortable level while letting you focus on the frequency range where speech lives. It sounds counterintuitive, but at the extreme volume some theaters play content, your ears fatigue quickly and dialogue clarity suffers as a result. The dialogue problem in modern movies is real, it's measurable, and it has multiple causes working together. Films are mixed for cinemas that bear no resemblance to your living room. Action sound design has gotten louder while dialogue has gotten squeezed. Actors are performing with authenticity that sometimes crosses into inaudibility. Streaming platforms compress audio in inconsistent ways. And fast editing doesn't give your brain time to process what was just said. None of these problems are going to fix themselves immediately, but understanding them means you can make smarter choices about your setup and your expectations. And hopefully, as the conversation about dialogue clarity gets louder, the industry will start paying more attention to the audience that's sitting there with subtitles on, wondering why movies stopped letting them hear the story. If this video gave you a clearer picture of why this is happening, hit that like button and share it with someone who thought it was just their hearing. Leave a comment telling me the most frustrating dialogue moment you've experienced recently. And subscribe if you want more content that takes these kinds of audio and home theater questions seriously. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.